Tonight we have a special guest. Brian Wood is with us. You guys will know him from everything from his work at Vertigo with the Northlanders, DMZ, his work over at IDW, Dark Horse, Image, just quite a lot of things. His work going on now, Briggs Land, Rebels, Black Road, which is one of my favorites.
Sure.
So welcome to the show, Brian.
Thanks for having me on. It's fun.
Of course. This is one of the things I find most interesting, and since we have a good look at what's behind you.
Oh yeah, I know it's messy, right?
Is this your workspace?
It is. I live in New York City in Brooklyn, so by definition, it's small, and my office is sort of the place where all the junk goes, as well as my. So there's bikes back there. And a lot of random stuff, so it's a little bit piled up and messy, but
okay. Now the books that we see behind you, are those just random books? Are those books you use for your creations, inspiration?
It's a bit of both. I mean, we sort of have we have family shelving in the other room and stuff that is like very clearly mine or too geeky or whatever to be on display in the main room ends up here. But I mean, a lot of it is research. You know, most of the comics I keep in here. Yeah.
Okay, and this is where you do most of your work. You don't go out to get some writing done.
I don't. I never do that. I might have tried once or twice, but I'm such a creature of habit. I need to be on my desktop machine. I can't even write on a laptop. Like I have a big screen. I need a big screen. I need my chair. I need everything. You know where it is.
You need your coffee by the side.
I can't get up and go to a cafe. I'm too distracted by it. Everything's different. Nothing's where it should be on the desktop and everything. So,
I mean, that's pretty impressive to me because for me, being at home is so distracting that for people like you who can actually make a living out of this, get into a routine to make sure that you don't get distracted. I think that's a pretty big achievement.
I mean, there's a lot of challenges to it. I mean, I'm not a hardcore video game player, but I play. So obviously when the game I've been waiting for comes out, oftentimes it has to sit on my desk still wrapped in plastic until I clear deadlines off. But all I want to do is just play it, you know. Or it's hard not to just like snack or eat or procrastinate by doing a lot of chores, which is my biggest vice, I guess.
Well, I don't know how much procrastinating you can do because, I mean, right now you're currently working on at least 3 books. Are we going to get Black Road back anytime soon?
We're pausing on that. I mean, it's you know, when you do a book at Image, unless you're one of like the chosen few, like the really high earners, it's like you make money. Like Black Road made money, but it didn't make a ton of money. So Gary and I worked on that, and then we had to stop and earn a bunch of money doing other things. You know, so I mean, the intention is to get back to it at some point. You know.
Okay.
I'm not sure when.
Okay, it will come back. I don't know if you see this, but at least in my shop, a lot of books like Black Road or other, you know, independents, I might not sell the numbers on the individual issues,
right?
But when the trades come out, especially if it's a book that I enjoy, they sell in bigger numbers than the individual issues.
That's true, and we're sort of seeing that just recently with Black Road. Like we're getting our royalty sheets on the trades, and we're like, oh, okay, you know, we should get back to this.
Okay,
you know, it's like, you know, we can see exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, perfect. Well, we'll get to that because I want to talk about your newer stuff a little later on. But you mentioned video games, and you said you're not a big video game player, but you spent a lot of years working in the video game industry.
I did, and possibly those two things are connected in some way.
Okay, that you're not a big video game player.
I was on staff at Rockstar Games for about 4 years during the insanity of Grand Theft Auto coming to be, right? Grand Theft Auto 3 when it really blew up. And it was, I mean, they made a movie out of this. It was really crazy. The amount of stress and insanity and party atmosphere and the just the nuttiness of the video game industry, I had like a front row seat. Like I sat at a desk. I was a graphic designer. I always say I did everything for the game except the game. So that means like every ad you ever saw for Grand Theft Auto, all the logos, anything that like the booklet, the cover of the game, the art on the disc of the game, everything but the game is what I did. So I would sit in this giant open plan room while the chaos swirled. Like, oh, there's 50 Cent coming in. There's this actor coming in who's doing voices. There's like, it was just like madness and insane hours. Like we're working. I remember I didn't have a day off for probably like 5 or 6 months, literally
Wow.
one day off. Because it's like there's so much money at stake, you know, on this, especially after Grand Theft Auto blew up big and they're making Vice City, the second one. It was like crazy. A lot of drugs, like everything you can imagine, you know, in that kind of a high stress environment
So
was there.
it really was a rock star environment.
It was, yeah, they really, I think they really enjoyed their fame, I guess, you know, and the success of it. And I was just like, you know, I was doing my comics on the side, or I was trying to. So I just wanted to do my job and leave. Like I wanted to leave at like 7 or whatever was a normal time to leave and go home and have my own life. And it was really hard. So I was always in a constant state of being angry and being stressed, looking at my watch, wanting to get out of there, and there my boss is looking at me like this guy is not sufficiently uh, into what he's doing here, you know. And I'm like, of course I'm not. It's a job. Like
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm not getting rich here, you know. I'm just earning my salary. Like I'm not an owner, you know. So I was like, I have to get out of here. I have to start a career with something that I own, right? I'm tired of working for making other people rich, as the saying goes. So it was right, and so I mean, I play games, but it's really hard. I can't play Rockstar games. Period. I like have like post traumatic stress or something. I'm
Every
not
time you
even
see that
joking
logo
about it.
pop up.
I know I'm not even joking about it. I'm sure I have some kind of residual stress related to their games. Um, but I play games more than I should, and not as much as others. So,
So you mentioned that you just wanted to plug in your hours, get out of there, write your own comic books. Now,
yeah,
that's interesting to me because you went to school for graphic design, correct? Not anything related to writing. Was comic book
kind of,
something
yeah.
that had always been in the back of your mind, or was it something that you used at Rockstar to get away from it all?
It was no, it came up in college. Like I'm different from almost everybody else I know in comics. Is that I didn't grow up reading. Period. I grew up in a very rural place. Comics were there's no comic shops. I think I remember vaguely seeing comics at the newsstand, you know, but I was never into it, you know. So all my peers, they grew up reading their favorite. Like, I mean, there's a reason. This is the reason why I feel like I do the kind of comics I do, and I'm not trying to have a career at DC or at Marvel because I don't have that childhood built-in affection for this stuff. I don't have the knowledge, you know, of it either. You know, all the history of the characters and everything. So I came into it in college um, because I saw Vertigo comics, and being the art school snob that I was like, those that's art. Oh, look, it's a Dave McKean cover. That's not a comic. Like I've never seen a comic. In my mind, I'm thinking of newsprint, like cheap Richie Rich comics or whatever. You know, I managed to actually see as a kid, you know, and I was like, wow, what is this? Like I didn't know comics were like this, you know. So I was like 25 at the time. So I was reading Vertigo then. I was reading Fantagraphics. Hate was, I think, the first comic that I followed in terms of like buying it every month because it reminded me of my own life. Preacher came around that time too. So my entry point into comic books was that I saw it as a way for me to combine stuff that I was already doing in school, like art and design and kind of writing. Like, you know, I didn't consider myself a writer there, but it was like an interesting, unique blend of stuff, you know? So I started playing around with comics, doing them as exercises in college, you know? If I had an assignment, I would do it as a comic as opposed to the way I was supposed to, you know? So just kind of like playing around, and I did a couple of stories in school, and my Channel Zero started off as an assignment in college. My first comic.
Yeah, that was your very first one published. Was that the first one you wrote too, or had you played around with things that have now been published before that?
No, nothing. I did a whole lot of really short comics, like four pagers, six page books. And some friends of mine at school who were also into comic, we would like make them into zines or print them up cheap and try to make them look like a real comic, you know, to get work, you know. And that's actually one of the things I sent around and placed to Channel Zero at Image at the time. Is I basically made my own comic. I printed it up. I paid for it myself, so that it looked professional. You know.
What was that? What got it published? That particular one?
Yeah, I remember I had a bunch of them. It was a 14-page story. You can see it in the back of the Channel Zero trade. And I went to San Diego, and I had these envelopes, and I literally handed one of them to every single publisher I saw, whether it was right for them or not. I remember I gave one to Bill Tucci, you know, what was his company called when he was doing She?
Oh God,
Yeah.
I can't remember, to be honest with you.
Like, it was like exactly the wrong place to try to give Channel Zero to, but I was just handing out to anybody that would take it. And it was a couple months after that Jim Valentino at Image gave me a call. He was like, "This is cool. Do you want to make it a comic?" So.
And that was the beginning. From I mean, because from there you've worked with both the majors. You seem to have settled home at Dark Horse for the most part at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of I mean, after I started making comics and really started to read them and was catching up, I was trying to read all the classics and everything, trying to like educate myself. It was Vertigo that seemed to be just the coolest. And it was the coolest at the time. It was like the Grant Morrison. It was like the late '90s. That was like all the best books that I liked anyway were there. And I used to think that's what I want. I want to be one of them. I want to be like Grant Morrison or Warren Ellis or Neil Gaiman. You know, so if Vertigo hadn't changed, you know, I would still be making books there. That was what I always wanted. So I did DMZ at Vertigo. I did Northlanders there. And then when Vertigo, like the writing was really on the wall, when Vertigo started to like shrink, you know, when Jim Lee and Dan DiDio came into power and Paul Levitz, who was a big champion of mine, left, I was like, you know what, this is not going to end well for the Vertigo that I know and love. So I was sort of able, thankfully, to sort of shift over to Dark Horse and do everything I would have done anyway at Vertigo, you know, just do it there instead.
So when you saw the writing on the wall, you got to finish DMZ out, but Northlanders was actually cut short, correct?
It was. DMZ did really well financially. I'm sure I could have kept that going, but we're heading into like year 6. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to stop at 72. That's like a ridiculous amount of comics. Like, I could use a break. Ricardo, the artist, I'm sure could use a break. You know, that's a respectable number. 12 volumes. It felt like a nice round number to end on. And they canceled Northlanders, which did fine monthly, but the trades just did not move in a sustainable fashion. So they canceled it, and to their credit, and I'm very thankful to them for it. They gave me a lot of time to end it. You know, they gave me like something like 7 or 8 issues warning. You know, so I was able to end it on issue 50, which again was a nice round number to end on.
Now, I mean, what's funny is I mean, you're saying it just wasn't selling the numbers they wanted, but it's become one of the trades that they now collect in the fat, thick format, and it does really well.
It does well now. It took a lot of years for me to convince them to put it into these new editions, because several of them had fallen out of print, and I would hear from the retailers. They were like, "When is DC going to put Northlanders 1 back into print? I can't sell any of the other ones without one." And I'm like, I don't know, you know. So I leaned on them for, I swear it took like 3 solid years before they finally were like, okay, well, like put it out again.
Well, that's good, and it may be also because I don't know that, but you've got your Black Road, which has a similar theme, and you know,
Maybe, yeah.
which is a really fun book. But one of the things I want to touch on here, because like Channel Zero, whether it's DMZ, I mean, even Northlanders, you and even your Ultimate X-Men run, one of the things that you bring to comic books that a lot of people do not necessarily utilize a lot is you bring a lot of politics into the comic book scene. And you do a good job of exploring both sides of it. So it's not like you're preaching to anybody, but was that something that you had intended to begin with, or is this something you've just sort of grown into and now it's your thing?
It's my first book, Channel Zero, was heavily political. That was just kind of what I was into at the time. Like very like zine stuff. I was like sort of like an angry art student, you know. And it was super preachy, but I felt like, and that book did really well at the time for who I was. Like as a first book, it made an impact. So I was sort of like, I guess this is my thing. You know, this is how I began. So I'll keep it going. It's like a brand, you know. And DMZ only sort of like DMZ kind of set it in stone, and I matured enough to approach DMZ and try to make it not preachy, try to like walk that fine line, make it balanced, you know, so it doesn't come off as some kind of like a rant or angry art student, you know. And I've sort of always made sure even though if I've written other books and stuff, that there was always that line that I consider to be Channel Zero, DMZ, the massive Briggs Land, and there'll be like another one. I always make sure I have that political stuff, that line of books, even if I divert and do like a young adult book like Demo or something, or Rebels. I do historical fiction. I always make sure that the political thing is always there, because it does feel like it's me. Yeah.
Okay, and you like to mix the political with the science fiction, and you love to explore New York City in the future, it seems,
Yeah.
for everything from Couriers to DMZ. And for anybody out there who is not familiar with DMZ, they're also available in that thick format through Vertigo for like $20 a piece. It's set in the future where a chunk of New York has seceded from the United States due to essentially a war against the people.
Yeah, I call it it's a Second American Civil War, and presumably the entire country is at war. Although I intentionally limited the story only to New York. Like I didn't try to explain the rest of the country, just to keep myself sane. There was a lot to deal with in that book. So the focus is really small, and we kind of see. And New York City is a no man's land. It's like a buffer zone between armies. So it's kind of a wasteland. And there's a reporter who finds himself trapped inside this DMZ and stays, like decides not to be extracted or like rescued, you know, and sees it as a career opportunity. It's like, I'm the only reporter here. If I can not die, you know, I can like report on all the weird subcultures and what life is like in this DMZ that no one knows about, you know.
And
yeah, go ahead,
yeah, you said you were keeping it small, you know, and not exploring the entire larger picture. But I think that with the way you developed and explored individual characters within that world, it felt much larger than simply being that one area?
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of. I mean, it was 72 issues. You know, we went deep into it. You know, like I defined all the neighborhoods and really sort of we made maps. You know, we did all this stuff to sort of make it as rich as possible. You know, and we talked about, like, the characters would reference the larger world and aspects of it and what's happening here and what's happening there. But the story itself never moved out of the city.
Yeah, just it leaves it up to the imagination, which I think in a lot of ways is much better than you trying to define even more in 72 issues, because my mind can
Yeah,
roam and imagine the things that are happening on the
I could
outside.
never have written it as good as someone's imagination. So it was best not to try.
So yeah, obviously the political stuff is very heavily influenced, but you're also into history quite a bit because you've currently got Rebels
Yeah.
being written, and as we talked about, Black Road. What so what is it about those particular eras? Because obviously we know Rebels is where it's set, but the Vikings in particular, you seem to have quite an interest in.
Yeah, I mean, it's I I created Northlanders kind of by accident, in the sense that I plucked it out of thin air. My editor was asked me. He's like, "You should write another monthly book, but it can't be any of your, like, New York City near future stuff that you've done. You've done that plenty. Give me something you've never written." So to this day, I cannot tell you why I thought of Vikings, but I did. And I was like, I want to do Vikings, but it's not going to be like Thor. It's not going to be like Dungeons and Dragons. There's going to be no mythology or fantasy. And it's going to be really gritty, like it's a crime novel, like it's a crime story, uh, as real as I can make it. So that was kind of my angle, and I loved it. I found, like, I did a lot of research. I really invested a lot of time and brain power into it. And even though I had 50 issues of it, I was like really sad at the end of it. I was like, I'm not ready to be done. I look at all these ideas I have in my notebooks. You know, it's not fair. I was like really, really bummed. And but I also really loved the idea of making a historical comic that wasn't like the classics illustrated. It wasn't lame. It wasn't cheesy or childish or just like boring, or like, you know, really basic art, you know, which I kind of associate the classics illustrated with being like the most obvious way they could tell the history, you know. And I was like, I like the fact that Northlanders was accurate, but we found a lot of flexibility in these stories. So I was like, I have to do it again. I have to do more. Rebels came first in terms of the idea in my head, and that was really me just thinking about, what do I care enough about to sit down and do that level of research again? Like, I have to love it, you know. Otherwise it shows. So the American Revolution stuff I've always loved, you know, and grew up loving. So I was like, that'll be easy, relatively speaking, you know. Like, I have a mental head start on it, you know. I came back to Vikings for Black Road because Gary Brown, the artist, I met him because he wanted to draw a Northlanders arc, you know. And I was like, sure, I'll write you one. But then the book got canceled. So we always sort of had the, you know, it was always sort of like, we would always talk and be like, oh, that sucked that we couldn't do a Northlanders arc. And I was like, you know, I'll just write you another Viking book. You know, I won't try to copy Northlanders. We'll like make it our own, but it'll be your Viking thing, and we'll finally do it. You know, so that's where that came from.
Well, that's kind of neat because I mean, Northlanders, you had a number of different artists on it. It wasn't just one, just one particular one. But what I find particularly interesting about that one was first off, I like the main character.
Yeah.
You know, he's extreme. You get invested in him extremely quickly. But the situation that you put them in, where he has just kind of come to accept that this is the way things are as the Christian church moves in to the north. Again, it was a fun historical fiction and political book all
Yeah.
combined in one.
Yeah, I really sort of let myself and let Gary off the hook, and it's not as historically accurate as Northlanders was, because that's a lot of work, you know.
I can
And I was
imagine.
like, you know what, Gary, don't worry about that. Just have fun, make it crazy. You know, don't worry about getting like making sure the buckles are correct. You know, like that was the level that we put into Northlanders. Like all the clothing had to be accurate. Like I was crazy. Like I really got way deep into it. You know, and I was like, let's just like let it rip on Black Road. You know, have fun. Don't worry about that stuff.
And it shows. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a little more over the top,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of action. There's a lot of good storytelling. I'm really excited to hopefully see that one come back because it is a
Me
creator-owned
too.
book between the two of you, correct?
It is. It
Okay.
is. And we really, I mean, it's designed to have multiple chapters, you know. So hopefully soon.
Okay, excellent. Now that one we're gonna focus on that main character through the whole thing.
Yeah, he's sort of I sort of envisioned him as a Viking version of Jack Reacher, you know. Like he's this, I don't know if you read those books, but it's like kind of like a series of crime novels where it's always the same guy, just a different case, you know, each book.
Okay, that gives you a lot of flexibility too. You can
Yeah,
play with it,
right.
come up with different, different things and just run with it. So, as long as we're on the topic of the new books that you have coming out,
Mhm.
the other one, Briggs Land, I think, did we just finish number 6 of the second arc?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
we did, and
So that wraps that up, correct?
right. And Mac Chatter, the artist, and I are taking a break for a lot of really boring schedule related Dark Horse involved reasons. We're taking a break. We're starting. I haven't said this to anybody yet, so saying it here vaguely. We're going to do a short thing that's not Briggs Land,
Oh,
just to kind of
together.
take a break, cleanse the palate. I had a crazy idea for like a short thing. I'm like, let's just like, you know, step away from Briggs Land, do this thing, come back. So that's the plan.
Okay, I
So
get.
I can't say what it is because you know Dark Horse wants to like actually announce it
Nope,
regularly.
that's fair. I understand you can't go
But
into it, but
soon,
can you tell
soon.
us what kind of genre it is?
It is a historical thing.
It is historical. Okay,
Yeah,
perfect. Keep
yeah.
going with that. Now Briggs Land is a that one. I don't know. I don't think I want to use the word fun for Briggs Land. It's a a town where they have seceded, and the Mama Bear of the group has essentially taken over while Papa Bear's in the in jail.
Basically,
And
yes.
yeah. So where does it take place exactly?
It takes place in upstate New York,
Okay.
which was, I mean, I live in the city. I've been upstate plenty of times, but I read well, an early version of Briggs Land took place out west, in the kind of like in Montana, like where you think of militias, you know, as being out there. But I read this article that said that the New York State has like more wild land than like half of the country. Like it's like I forget what the exact number is, but the point is that there's vast amounts of empty wilderness in New York State, which is not something people think about when they think of New York State as being empty and wild, you know. So, and I was like, that's good. I'm going to move Briggs Land there for a whole bunch of reasons. One, to buck the expectation, you know, not make it so obvious. And there's just so much more cultural and racial diversity in New York State than there is in Montana, where like everybody is going to be white. Everything is kind of, I mean, not to insult anybody there, but you know, there's like huge immigrant populations in upstate New York. So I felt like it gave me greater story opportunities to set it there, and it's close to the city. It's close to like a lot of stuff. Um, and the idea of Briggs Land is that this was a family, the Briggs, that bought all this land like over 100 years ago, um, almost as a way to give their family like a legacy, a safe harbor, that whatever happens in the world, they'll always have this land, it'll always be theirs, it'll be private, right? So it's persevered throughout all this time, and only very, very recently has become political in like the extremist sense, in like the white supremacy sense, which is like a fairly recent phenomenon. It started in the 80s. So, and with that came the organized crime. So I always say, as like a shorthand, it's like the Sopranos if they were militia, you know, a family crime drama, right? The problem with Briggs Land is that I came up with that before Trump and before all the Trumpy white supremacy stuff. When it was really, I was like, I just want to make this mafia story, you know, and like current events caught up to it, and so now it's like super real in like an uncomfortable way. And because before it was like, you know, you think of militias, you're like, yeah, they're real, but they're somewhere out there. No one really knows about them. No one really cares. It's like the mafia. You know the mafia is real, but you don't really think of it as like an actual threat to you. You know, you think of it as like a genre. You know, but now the white supremacy movement has become real, and people feel like it's a threat. So now I'm stuck with trying to write this book with all this like real cultural significance, like, you know, getting in the way at times, unfortunately.
Okay, so you just need to take a break, work on this other
I'm just taking
project,
a break.
step back from it for a moment, kind of see
It's
how
sort of
things
like,
play out, reevaluate.
it's a challenge to write a book where some characters are Nazis and not have people say like, oh, Briggs Land is that Nazi book, right? Because that's what people reduce it to, you know. So yeah, I mean, that's not exactly the entire reason I'm taking a break, but it does present a challenge, you know. And I feel like I want to take a couple of months, see what I can tweak to have it be like a relevant book, but not an unpleasant book to read, you know.
Yeah, no, I can understand that.
Tricky.
And
Yeah.
with you guys stepping away, it gives you this opportunity to work on the other book you were doing.
Yeah, and it's like a short break. It's not a long break.
Okay, they'll all be coming back. But
Yeah.
you've got so Rebels, the second arc, is that wrapped up yet?
That is wrapped up. We're talking about a third arc. Rebels does, I don't know how it does in your store, but the trades do super well. You know.
Actually the trades, we have Sac State right around the corner,
Yeah.
and we have had multiple teachers actually send students in here to pick the book up for classes.
Right, and that was intentional on my part. Like, I wrote it. I mean, it's for any age, but my goal was I want to make it something that could sit in like a middle school library, you know, and not offend anybody, you know, and not be overly political. Like, I wanted it to be something kids read, because that's how I fell in love with that history, was picking up and reading Johnny Tremaine and Ethan Allen stories when I was a kid. So that outreach to schools and teachers and museums has really paid off. So we're talking about, I'm trying to figure out what the third story for that is.
Okay,
So I'm
so we'll be
working on
coming
that.
back
So
to
there's
that.
Briggs Land, there's Raffles. There's a whole bunch of things that have not been like announced, unfortunately. I've been talking to Dark Horse about another Aliens book.
Well, you
Is
just
that
wrapped up Defiance.
right? And that
Yep.
did, like, Fox, actually, who has the Alien license, really loves those characters, which is nice. I'm like, make a movie, you know, out of them. So it'll come back at some point, like a new series. We're talking about that. And yeah, so I'm doing this new thing with Mac. There's another thing I'm doing at another publisher that is not announced yet. So it's like, I always hate doing podcasts and interviews and being like, I can't talk about it. I know it's annoying. So you're just catching me at the in between time, you know, in books. And I'm doing a lot of TV writing now, which is the other sort of big change in my career.
So what got you into doing that?
I was coming up on my 20th year of writing comics, and I was like, that's a long time. I've been writing, my agent always tells me, and she's been saying this for years. She's like, Brian, I represent you not because you're a comic book writer, but because you're a writer. Write other stuff. You don't only have to write comics in your entire life, right? Which is very, very true. You kind of get into a rut, like a very pleasant rut with comics. Comics are fun. They move fast. You have total freedom. It's like a lot of fun. You get to work with great artists. It's like collaborative in the best way possible. But also, I'm like, I don't want to like only do comics. I want to try new things. I want to like stretch different muscles. I want to have like challenges. Comics is not a huge challenge when you've been doing it for 20 years. So TV writing seemed obvious because I could be there to like adapt my own books into TV, because my agent's already out there trying to like sell my books. TV is huge now, so there's lots of opportunity. So I wrote a pilot script. I was hired to write. Well, the first thing I did that wasn't comics. I wrote a video game called 1979. It's like one of those like story video games about the Iranian Revolution. I wrote that, so that was like my first like screenplay. And then I got hired to write a pilot for the actor Wilder Valderrama's company. They had like the most basic of ideas, and they hired me to turn it into a show. And it sits on a shelf, but it was a foot in the door. Like it was a real learning experience. So that was good. And so because of that, I was able to be the writer on the Briggs Land pilot. Briggs Land got bought by AMC, and I wrote the pilot. AMC passed on it recently, which is kind of a bummer, but I have to tell myself that's what happens in TV. Like most of the time, things get passed on, right? That's the norm. Unlike comics, where it's really rare when something is canceled, or it's really rare if I pitch something and no one wants it. So, but based on that, I'm writing the pilot for another one of my books, which I can't say which one. So, I mean, it's really like half of my day, half of my time is spent on TV writing, which is something nobody knows because things, it all happens very slow and behind the scenes, and I can't put it on Twitter, But it's a lot of fun because I have to start at the beginning in TV. No one cares in LA how many comics I've written. Literally, they don't even care. I have to start at the beginning. I have to write. I had to take that Wilder Valderrama job as a foot in the door, right? Because I was untested and unproven, So it's like I have to start at the bottom, and it's like it seems like it would be annoying or frustrating, and it is once in a while, but it's kind of cool in a way because it shatters your ego. You have to start over and you have to learn something, and it's not the same kind of writing. It's really different, And my first drafts like suck. They're really bad, and I get like pages of notes, and I'm like, oh man, and I'm like, I suck. I'm bad at this, and I have to learn it. So it's exciting. It's that creative challenge. It's that stretching of new muscles that I am really enjoying, and I feel like I need, So I'm doing all that kind of stuff. I'm sort of putting notes together to write a novel. Again, just to diversify, just to try different things, give myself a creative challenge. So all that is happening while I'm doing these comics.
While you're doing the comics that you're still working on, right. Yeah, no, it sounds like that. Is there a little more oversight, I guess I would say, in the Hollywood script writing than in turning in your comic book script?
Yeah. I mean, if I write a comic and I send the script to my editor, unless there's something really wrong with it, it'll just go forward. I don't get a lot of
Okay.
notes. No one gets a lot of notes in comics, except for the very select editors who really try to edit. Comics moves fast. By definition, it has to move fast. We're all on monthly schedules, so there's not a lot of like just now I spent 7 months working on the outline for a TV show. That's crazy. 7 months. But the things it's so much better than it was if I only had one a month, because I'm getting all this input from other people. I can think about it. I can take my time. It's great. So like comics moves quick, and I feel like a lot of people, like, there's the reason why there's typos in comics, because everybody's trying to work as fast as possible. So this allows me to move slower, get a lot of input from smart people, who will tell me that scene is bad. Get it out. And I'm like, but I don't want to get it out. It's my scene, but I have to. And then I do it, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's better now, And I kind of wish comics was that way. I wish there was the money and the time built into comics to work that way, because everybody's books would be like 100 times better, So yeah, but it is like a lot of conference calls, a lot of meetings with guys in suits, a lot of annoying notes, a lot of frustrating notes, a lot of stress and pressure. But so far, I'm still in the honeymoon period where I'm kind of enjoying it.
Well, hopefully we'll get to keep you around in comic books for a while longer too.
I will always write them. That was what I always say to my agent. She's like, you got to write new things, but never stop making comics, because it is fast and it is easy. So while you're waiting for those notes on your TV script, you can keep it busy making comics.
Okay, and one comic we didn't talk about that you're currently doing, that I kind of saved to the last because it's one of it was my childhood thing.
Okay.
Is you are currently working on Robotech?
Oh yeah.
You completely forgot too.
I'm actually not now, because
Oh, you're not now.
Well, because we're working so far in advance of the books themselves. So in my mind, I'm like, I've already moved on from that job.
So how many issues did you do total?
By myself, I wrote 4. The next 4, I wrote pretty like detailed outlines that Simon Furman turned into script.
Oh, okay.
And then I stopped. I told Titan, like, if they get to the I had to stop because of like scheduling reasons. I told them I'd come back for sure if they got to the next chapters of Robotech, like Masters and New Generation. I would love to like develop that, But for now, I stopped.
So is Robotech? So first off, is Robotech something that you used to watch as a kid?
It is, and there's like a whole story with how this came about. I love that show. And when I say the show, I mean the American version that I had to wake up with. I had to wake up at 5 in the morning to watch it on weekends, because that was the only time it was on. Where I grew up, literally I had to wake up at 5. And I've always had a really soft spot for it, and more so as I aged, because I would get into my teens and into my 20s, and I would think about it, and I'd be like, that was a good show. Even as a 25-year-old, I could watch it, and I'm like, I'm still into this. Like it scales up, it ages with you. Like as you get older, you find different things about it that resonate. I always tell this story about how when I was a kid, I would wake up to watch it, and after a few weeks, my sister would wake up with me, and she was older than me. She was a teenage girl, and she was addicted to it, and to the point where she would wake up that early to watch it with her annoying brother, And I was like, and I think about that, I'm like, what? That worked for her, and she hates sci-fi, but she liked that. And I was like, there's something special about this story, because it works for everybody. You know, I mean, if it worked for her, then you know there's something there for a wider range of audience than you might assume. So it's always been there in the back of my head, and I got approached first years ago by when Dynamite had the license. And I pitched them this sort of radically modernized version of the TV show. And they couldn't make the numbers work, like the page rates I needed, they couldn't match. And so it didn't happen then. Then Dark Horse came to me and they were like, we might be able to get the Robotech license. Would you write this for us? And I'm like, yes, I would. And Dark Horse couldn't make the numbers work. So by this time, Harmony Gold has read my pitch, you know? So when it landed at Titan, they actually came to me. They're like, do you want to write it now? And this is like five years time, you know, from that first version. So I feel like it was like, well, now I have to, after all this buildup, you know. And I didn't really have the time. I made the time, which is why I was only sticking around for those 8. But I have, even though it's an aggressive adaptation, I have a lot of affection for that show, and wanted to make it modern in a way that would appeal to that wide range that I knew it would, and not just be, oh, it's another anime comic, and have that be sort of put in a box. You know, I wanted to sort of give it a chance to reach an audience that would normally think they would read that.
And it does really well, single issues. I haven't seen the trade yet, but you've got, imagine that, a bunch of Robotech fans at a comic book shop.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of built-in fans that immediately want it on board, and a lot of other people who weren't as familiar with it that have tried it. But so one of the things that I've noticed in it is so you're condensing a lot into those issues. You're not spending, I don't know if you're not allowed to, but you guys aren't spending the time to flesh it out like the television show. Is it a time constraint, or was that a conscious choice?
It was a conscious choice. That was all me. I'll take all the blame for it. Whatever glory comes with it. But mostly blame, I'm sure. I watched the episodes again, and I was struck by the fact that a lot of it does not age well. Like the Min-Mei character does not age well, because in the show, she's like super passive and really dumb. Like she's played for laughs. Like she's all giggly and stupid. And there's a lot of like real regressive stuff, like her beauty pageant and all this stuff that I felt like just doesn't feel modern. It feels like a little regressive. So I was like, okay, I want to update that. I want to get that whole like, oh, Rick, save me, please, kind of tone out of it. And there's also just a lot of, I say with affection, a lot of filler in that show because of the way it was all put together and cobbled together, like the American version. So, and a lot of other storylines, like how the Zentradi were like hypnotized by Min-Mei's songs. I was like, again, a little cheesy. I'm trying to expand the audience, right? If I was writing a comic only for the core Robotech audience, I would stick to it, you know. But I wanted it to find purchase, you know, and not have someone dismiss it because it seems silly, you know. And I also knew we can't do a 48 issue series. It can't be one episode, one comic. I have to condense it. You know, I got to move faster, just for the sake of you know, moving faster and not asking Titan to commit to like a 7-year stretch for the series. You know, so it was kind of like all of that put together. So I had to make a lot of hard cuts. I watched all the episodes over and over again and figured out what were the most important story points in each episode. Is that enough for like an issue? If not, I watch the next episode, find the story point. So I was like doing like a lot of like planning on a chart and everything, trying to figure out what to keep and what not to keep.
Okay, all right. So
With love, with love.
of course, of course. Is he the what? I'm sorry. Who'd you say was co-writing the next four?
Simon Furman.
Oh, is he
He's
going
like
to
a
take
British
over
guy.
right after you?
Yeah, yeah, he is.
He will. Okay, perfect. I
I mean,
have.
both our names are on the five issues 5 through 8 because I outlined them and he wrote the script.
Okay, excellent. Megan is asking, what is your favorite Robotech character and why?
When I was a kid, I used to draw Max and Miria. I thought they're cool. You know, those pilots. The guy with the glasses and the girl with the alien with the green hair. Maybe when I was a 10-year-old boy, I thought she was cute or something. I don't know. Now it's Roy. I like Roy and Claudia. I like their relationship. Um, so I would not to lump them together as one because I shouldn't. So I guess I would say Roy, but it's really Roy and Claudia. So and you can kind of see like I sort of spared Roy his fate. You know, I wanted to keep him around in the comic. He doesn't die, which isn't a spoiler. So
Okay, all right. Well, that means good things for Claudia then too.
yeah,
So off the Robotech subject real quick, we got another
sure.
question in from Adam. He says, what was the process like of getting Fight for Tomorrow published over at Vertigo?
Man,
And how did Denny Cohen and Kent Williams get involved on art?
it's a real blast from the past. That was early in my career. That was really early. Um, so I had done Channel Zero. I had randomly and weirdly got hired to write a bunch of issues of Generation X at Marvel because I was friendly with Warren Ellis. So I had this experience of working at Marvel early on, and often a lot of creators find at the beginning of their career you work for DC or you work for Marvel once, and the other company offers you your work. It's like they notice you if you're at Marvel, and so DC was like, you have to do a book for us, and I'm like, okay, you know, I was like really early. I still didn't really know what I was doing, and I had an editor there who just asked me what I wanted to do. She was at Vertigo, and I was really into like kung fu films at the time, you know, Hong Kong films. So I pitched this story, and she was like, I think whoever draws it should know martial arts in order to like draw the best martial art comic. And she's like, I know Dennis Cowan knows martial arts. I'm gonna ask him. And so I guess the short version of this is I have no idea how that happened. Like it happened elsewhere. I was just said, here's your creative team. I was like, all right, it's pretty good.
Okay, all right, all
I'll
right.
take it. But it was like, I mean, I'm vague about it because I really did not know what I was doing. It was really early on, and I think that book was probably three issues at least of pointless filler. You know, I was still learning how to write a comic at that time. But I'm
Okay.
very blessed to have Dennis and Kent on that book.
All right, we got another one. We're coming up on time, guys, so I'll hit him up with one more. Richard has asked you, do you have any plans of going back and working with Becky on Demo? And
Oh man,
for everybody, he means Becky Cloonan. In
right.
fact, Demo was the first book I ever read of yours.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that book really kind of put both me and Becky on the map. I would work with Becky tomorrow on anything. I love her. She's my oldest friend in comics. Excuse me. It's just like we always say, oh yeah, we should do Demo, you know, but we're always busy. You know, there's never been the compelling reason to. Like I haven't like woken up in the middle of the night with like the best demo idea ever, you know. And every time I have space in my schedule, she's busy. You know, I check in with her a lot. So I don't know when. I don't know if ever. I feel like if the stars are going to align and it's going to make sense, then we'll do it. But
All right, well, that it's not
no
off the
hardcore
table.
plans. No, it's definitely not. No, and we always say generally, oh yeah, one day it'd be fun, you know. So we just got to wait for like I said, the magical alignment of all the variables.
And she's busy now too, so that's completely
She's
understandable. And
super
she's gotten
busy,
into
and
writing
I'm
quite a
super
bit.
busy too.
So
Yeah, she's doing everything, gallery shows, writing. I don't know. So.
Yep, that's awesome. So we're coming up to a close here. Thank you very much for joining us,
Sure,
Brian.
yeah.
I got one last question for you.
Yeah.
Extremely important. Which do you prefer, soft serve or traditional ice cream?
It's tough.
It's a hot debate down here at the store.
Is it really?
Oh, it's like 50-50.
I would have to say regular.
There we go. I knew I liked you.
I grew up with soft serve. It was a big thing in Vermont where I grew up, weirdly. Vermont is also the home of Ben and Jerry's, so there's that. But the summer, we call them a creamy, CREEMEE. That's what we called them where I grew up.
A creamy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which sounds a little dirty, but that's what they're still called now. That was like a real summertime thing. So I have love for the soft serve. If you put a gun to my head, I would pick regular.
There we go. All right, that's one more vote on my side. Thank you very much for joining us, Brian.
Sure.
Everybody out there, check out the books that he's got on the shelf. We've got the trades available. Come in, talk to me. I can point you in the right direction. And of course, follow what you're on all social networks, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't use a lot of them. I'm Brian Wood on Twitter, which is probably the place where information is going to happen.
And check out his website, it's brianwood.com, correct?
Yep.
Super
I
simple.
try to be. I managed to be Brian Wood on most everything, which is good. So
perfect. Well, thank you again for joining us, Brian.
Sure,
it was a pleasure talking to you, and I'm looking forward to seeing more from you. I can't wait to see some of those mysterious products that are coming
soon.
All right. Well, thank you, you guys. Everyone out there, have a great night, and check out some of Brian Wood's stuff. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Appreciate it.